Давайте начнем с того, что поговорим немножко про текущее нашей индустрии, что есть, что происходит и так далее. Собственно, мобильный рынок, два ключевых стора — это Google Play и App Store, и доход этих сторов за прошлый год составил $7 миллиардов. То есть это прям такой интересный большой рынок, но с другой стороны рынок развивается, он динамичный, но с другой стороны рынок уже достаточно насыщен контентом. Как вы думаете, сколько сейчас приложений в Google Play? Кто знает? Догадки. 200 тысяч? 10 миллионов? За прошлый год появился 1 миллион новых приложений в Google Play. В App Store чуть побольше, несмотря на то, что у них более сложные политики прохождения контента, это около 2 миллионов. Вот. И мы не говорим еще про локальные рынки, допустим, рынок Китая, который имеет большое количество сторов, которые распространены только на территории Китая, но, несмотря на это, один только этот рынок заработал за прошлый год $2 миллиарда. 7 миллиардов вот эти два стора по всему миру, и один Китай только 2 миллиарда. И каждый год, собственно, конкуренция растет, и я предлагаю поговорить с Питером немножко про конкуренцию. Peter, can you tell us how a developer can win the competition right now on these populated markets?
Yeah, so I think that the app stores are no different from like any other market out there. That typically it's not a problem to find a lot of different offerings, a lot of different games, and if you look at the app stores, there are for every Angry Birds, there are hundreds of thousands of not so Angry Birds, not so successful games, and a lot of those games are they can be very, very good, but the big problem is that nobody knows about them.
What they should do in this situation?
So the thing there is that the first thing that you need to do, of course, you need to create great games, great apps. But I think what I always say is that if you're serious about making games, you need to be very, very serious about marketing, very, very serious about branding. And if you look at Angry Birds, we are always looking at how do we stand out from the crowd, from the competition. And I mean, it's even starting with simple things like, coming here. It's very easy to find, the Rovio people, the Angry Birds people, because you see the red hoodies. So like already, like on a personal level, standing out. The same thing if you look at when we launched Angry Birds, we did something like 30 or 40 different designs of just the app icon, to make sure that it stands out. So every little detail, very, very important to think about how do you stand out? How do you do things differently from everybody else? And of course, with hundreds of thousands of other games and apps, hitting the market every year, it's not very easy. But I think that that's one thing that you really need to think about. That okay, how do you do things differently? So how do you make different games? How do you make your marketing stand out? How do you stand out from the crowd? And it can be sometimes very simple things that make you stand out. And every every game, every app, of course, it's unique and has its own unique requirements. But you really need to think about standing out from the crowd. That's the most important thing from my perspective.
This is good. Maybe we can see this great bird.
Yeah.
Good. This is just in general, but what can you say in details? Should the graphic assets differ from App Store and Google Play? Are they different to these stores? Are they different in marketing, the approaches?
I think that there's not like a huge difference. If you look at, the basic problem with both the Apple App Store, Google Play, it's really that there is an abundance of stuff. I mean, it's again, there are millions of apps, millions of games. So it's that's really the biggest challenge there. And of course, it is about discovery then, that if you're not in the top 10, good luck, then nobody will find you. It's, the search on both sides, it's not super effective. and I really think that again, like you really need to think about then how you stand out. But then if you look at kind of like the most effective ways to kind of like drive downloads and make sure that people find you. So I mean, of course, getting featured by either Apple or Google is like super good, but then it's very difficult to make that happen. But there, it helps if you have good relations to those guys. So if you kind of like know the guys at Apple, at Google, but of course then you have a bit of competition there as well, that a lot of people have apps and games that they want Apple and Google to know about. So there again, you come back to this, that okay, why should they talk to you? Why are you different? So I think that again, it comes back to the differentiation part.
Yeah, actually, it's good to have contacts in Google and App Store, Apple featuring them. But it doesn't happen to every company.
No, but again, like but it only happens if you do something differently. I mean, of course, they have people pitching to them like every day. So then, why should they listen to you? Why are you different? So that's again, really comes back to that, really think about how can you make things different.
Can you tell us a bit more how Angry Birds were launched the first time?
Yeah, and actually, if you look at a little bit about Rovio as a company, I mean, Rovio started 10 years ago, so back in 2003. Actually, Rovio got started out of a game making competition that I organized back then. And then Kalak Niklas and two of his friends were students at the Aalto University in Helsinki. And okay, they created a game called King of the Cabbage World. They won the competition, came to me, and said kind of like, okay, now what? And I said, okay, you guys love making games, so why don't you start a company to do that, make games. And then 6 years, 51 games later, Angry Birds. So Angry Birds came out in 11th of December 2009, so a bit over 4 years ago. And yeah, I mean, one kind of like important thing there is that wasn't kind of like an overnight success, that we actually made a few games before and kind of like learned a lot. But then if you look at how kind of like Angry Birds happened, so Angry Birds started with the characters. So Jaakko Iisalo, so one of our game designers, been drawing these bird characters for a while, and then he was pitching a game idea in 2009, and people didn't really get the game idea, but everybody fell in love with the characters and said that we have to make a game around those birds, and we did. So then, like 8 months, 12 people working on that at the time, and then we launched the game.
It was a premium release, right?
The paid version. Yeah, and then of course the App Store looked different then. So yeah, it was 99 cents, and then it wasn't kind of like an overnight success. Actually, yeah, we became number one in Finland. So we told friends and family to download the game, and not that many.
How big is Finland? The market, tiny, the mobile market.
Tiny. I mean, we're only 5 million people, so it's like it was enough to tell friends and family to download the game. And then back then not too many iPhones. Country of Nokia, so it was kind of pretty easy to get to number one. And then we became number one in Sweden. Then Apple noticed that there was something going on, so we got featured in the UK, featured in the US, and then we went to number one and stayed there. We didn't have any advertising, any marketing budget, so it was all about contacting all the blogs, all the people in the industry. Then with Angry Birds, it's a brand that has kind of like built-in virality, if you will, because when you hear Angry Birds, it's a brand that begs for a question: why are the birds angry? And once you ask yourself that question, we're stuck in your head forever. So kind of like that's how it works. So it doesn't have anything to do with like technical, like viral things, but you really, again, it's an example of what you need to do. Starting with the branding, the naming of your product, that really think about how you create a brand that will stick in your head. stick in people's head. And then if your brand kind of like begs for a question, it's really good. If it creates a reaction, it's really good. So don't go for like some kind of generic name that goes in and out. Like you need to kind of like think about something that really creates some kind of reaction. So that's super important. So but anyway, we didn't have any advertising budget, any marketing budget, and we haven't still. We don't use any money on traditional advertising. We don't pay for
purchase traffic.
No, we don't. We don't buy any traffic or
Would you
any users.
recommend other companies to purchase traffic when they start their mobile business and launch their app in the App Store or Google Play?
I would say that it really depends on kind of like what you're doing and what you need to get done. But it's super expensive to do kind of like paid user acquisition, and I mean that's something that you see now in the most competitive markets, Japan, Korea, starting to happen in the US, that it's so expensive now to do user acquisition that even TV ads are cost effective. So that kind of like tells you something about what has happened for the price of kind of like user acquisition. So actually my recommendation would be that unless you have like super deep pockets, you're not going to be able to buy your way into the market with kind of like user acquisition. And most startups, most kind of like teams kind of like getting into the market, you don't have the deep pocket. So you really need to think about other ways to get your game or your app out there.
On the other hand, whenever you open the application, you see Clash of Clans ads. They are purchasing traffic. They are in the tops. They are in the top crossing for the several years, but they still acquire a lot of users.
Yeah, but I mean that's the same thing if you look at Clash of Clans, Candy Crush, like all of these. Yes, of course. Once you have a game that that okay, if you purchase or like invest $1 into user acquisition and you get 2 or more back, yeah, of course it's worth doing. And I mean the same thing, why they're buying TV ads is that again, it's pretty easy to see that okay, it generates this many installs, so then like go do it. But I think that again, until you have that worked out, through your soft launch and you like getting the retention numbers in place, all of that. I mean, it's you really need to kind of like know what you're doing and have that situation that you actually get more money back than you pour into it.
So you need to look at the indicators that you have within your game or your application, and then decide to purchase or not to purchase traffic.
Yeah, but and I think that that's of course you have to kind of like get the numbers right and make it work. But I really think also that even kind of like then with that, if you look at okay, kind of like mentioned, okay, you have Clash of Clans, you have Candy Crush, and so on. You also have, for every Clash of Clans, you have hundreds, probably thousands of copies, and I think that that's also one thing that, of course, you can try to do that, but again, it's not necessarily kind of like the most successful model and idea. So I really think that that's also important. That then like you have these kind of like outliers, like like Flappy Bird. Like again, so it's not. It's a great example of one guy in like Vietnam being able to create something massive, and again. And he didn't do that by like copying, one of the, Puzzle and Dragons or Candy Crush or whatever. So I would kind of like recommend trying to come up with some more original ideas as well. If you are a small team, you probably don't have the deep pockets to kind of like spend your way into the market. So think about other ways you can get there.
Anyway, Clash of Clans is popular, and even there are 10 or 20 clones of this game in the popular countries, and they are in top grossings, and they generate a lot of money. Because Clash of Clans and Supercell, they don't sell the license for the game. That's why there is Clash of Clans in China, the original version, with the same monetization and the tools, and they generate good revenue. So in this case, clones and copies, they work. The successful titles.
Yeah, to kind of like to some extent, and of course, I mean the same can be said about looking at like what happened with Flappy Bird. That there are like look at the top 10 in the App Store, and it's like copies and clones. But that's actually something that was of course in result of pulling the app and all of that. But again, yeah, of course you can try to copy your way into the market as well. So it's again. Maybe not like the way I would do it, but yeah, you make your choices.
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's speak about the mobile market in general. So we have games, we have utilities, we have business applications. Which of these types you think are most successful and more profitable?
Yeah,
where to go?
Yeah, I mean games and entertainment in general, of course, is kind of by far the biggest category in most markets. But of course, if you look at kind of like then the utility side and all of that, so it seems like there's a demand for some of those products. So Microsoft did a pretty good job on kind of like getting their Office products now out on like the iPad and seems to be monetizing okay. But still, they can't compete with games. So games clearly is kind of the biggest category, and I don't expect that to change. I think that that's where the volume is clearly.
Okay, I see. Maybe let's speak about future. So about gaming industry, how you see it? What will happen within 10 years, for example?
Yeah, so 10 years is a long time considering that that's longer than kind of like even the App Store's been around, longer than the iPhone's been around. So, who knows? It's kind of like super difficult to predict. But yeah, I think that no matter what will happen on kind of like the technology side, kind of like if you ask me, it's all about kind of like the strong brands, and of course 10 years from now there will be like a lot of Angry Birds experience out there. So I mean we've only been doing this for 4 years, and as I always say, we're not building Angry Birds for like 100 days but for 100 years. So kind of like we're just at the beginning. And if you look at games, there are some franchises that's been around, okay, maybe not forever, but for a long time. So you look at Mario. So Nintendo has been doing Mario games for almost 30 years, and I think that again, not maybe in games, but if you look at like characters and all of that, Hello Kitty turns 40, so it's been around for 40 years this year. And I don't think, and if you look at Disney, Mickey Mouse has been around since 1928, and in kind of like all kinds of forms and shapes. So if you ask me about like 10 years, yeah, there will be lots of Angry Birds stuff out there, and I don't know exactly what it will look like, what the games will be like, but yeah, I expect to see a lot more Angry Birds.
Do you plan to develop new brand title? Angry Birds is a good one, but what about others? You tried several?
Yeah, I mean we are. If you look at Rovio, it's kind of like similar to another great red brand, Coke. So like the Coca-Cola company has Coke. They also do Sprite and Fanta and like a bunch of stuff. But clearly Angry Birds is our Coke. So Then we've done Bad Piggies. That's been also kind of like very successful, but it's still part of kind of like the same franchise. And yeah, you can expect to see other kind of like IP, other brands from us. But if you look at Angry Birds, we now have more than 2 billion copies of Angry Birds games out there. So Angry Birds is the most distributed piece of entertainment content ever. So it's bigger than anything in games, in music, in video. So it's pretty difficult even for us to kind of like beat those numbers. And but actually what those numbers then kind of like translate into is actually pretty amazing brand awareness. So 9 out of 10 Americans know the brand of Angry Birds. 93% of the Chinese population knows the brand of Angry Birds. Pretty much everybody in Korea knows Angry Birds. I don't know what the percentage would be here in Russia, but we're getting there. So again, I really think that what is happening now in the App Store, what's happening in games, is very similar to what's been happening in kind of like any other market, that it really becomes a branding game. So the strong brands will be there if you can like manage them properly, and they tend to have a very kind of like long life. I mean, if you again look at soft drinks, I mean, you have Coke, you have Pepsi, but how many other like cola products or brands do you kind of like remember and have globally? So I think that brand will become even more important in kind of like our business going forward.
Okay, thank you. Speaking of China and emerging markets, how do you fight with piracy? Do you fight with it? Because it's a big problem.
Yeah, I think, yes, of course, piracy is a problem, but having kind of like no piracy, having nobody copying you is an even bigger problem. So I always kind of like get developers coming up to me and say that, okay, but hey, how should we deal with China, you and all the piracy? I think that you worry about it once you have piracy happen. So for us, Angry Birds has been the most copied brand in China for several years now. And yes, it's a problem, but it's also a very good kind of like health indicator for the brand, that if nobody copies you, then nobody cares. So then if you are the most copied brand in China, it also kind of like means that you're the most loved brand in China. So we don't mind being the most loved brand in China. And yeah.
Do you develop your official franchise in China?
Yeah, we have. We have big presence in China. Our first office outside of Helsinki was actually Shanghai, so it's been a very important focus for us. Really early, and we have activity. I mean, of course, if you look at Rovio, so we're not a games company. We make games, but we also have a big animation, big video distribution business. We do consumer products. I mean, these things here, and some tens of thousands of other products. 45% of our business in 2012 was actually in consumer products, physical consumer products. So yes, of course, for us, piracy is a problem, but we also know that you can't kind of like win that war by throwing like a lot of lawyers at it. So yes, we go after people who infringe on our brand, but again, it's also important for us that we kind of like try to deal with it by making sure that we have the official licensed products. And in China, most places, our fans kind of like know the difference between real and fake. And I think most people, if they have a choice, will go for the real product. But then you have to offer that choice. So I haven't had time to kind of look around here in Novosibirsk. Just got here, but if we don't have the official products available, and there are fake products available, we can't really blame the fans for going with whatever is available. So it's also important for us to make sure that we meet the demand.
Okay, thank you. We have 15 minutes left. Then I guess this is a good time for answers and questions.
What is actually the person of a developer in your team? As I understand, you have a big management, not management, but people who.
We are active in many businesses.
Yeah.
So again, if you look at Rovio, the way we look at ourselves as a triple E company. Yeah, and it's so we are active in entertainment, all areas of entertainment. We also have a big education business that we are starting to roll out as we speak. And then we apply entrepreneurship to everything we do. So that's where you get the crazy ambition, the crazy scale in what we do. Games unit within Rovio. So Rovio right now is more than 800 people. And I think in games we probably have something a bit over 300 people in games. But in games that then includes developers, game designers, producers, artists, and so on and so on. In our animation studio, so we have the biggest animation studio in Northern Europe. I don't remember exact. It's somewhere between 100 and 200 people in the animation studio, and there we have again animators, script writers, producers, audio. So that's again a business of its own. In our books team, we have people who make books and comics and work with external publishers, freelancers. In our consumer products team, we have licensing people. We have product designers. So I'm for physical products. We have people who are experts in food, drinks, things like that. So it's very heterogeneous environment, and again different skills, different talent depending on which unit. And maybe one thing that I should add to that we also have a very diverse workforce anyway, that we have more than 40 different nationalities. So we have people from Russia, from Brazil, from France, from Germany, from all over the planet. So it's a very global team as well.
I guess Russians work in development mostly.
We have I think we have actually people from Russia in many different roles, not only in development. So it's Russian people can do other things than developing stuff.
Thank you.
Peter, thank you for доклад. What have you learned in projects before AB? Maybe 5 main things. Thank you.
5 main things. I don't know. I think that we're always learning. So I'm here today to learn. So I've never been to Novosibirsk, never been to Siberia before. Been to Russia many times, but not here. So one of the main reasons I'm here is actually to learn from you guys. So that's very important in everything we do. We definitely don't know everything, and we need to learn, and hopefully we can learn faster than the other guys. I think that if you look at the Rovio experience and history and what we've learned so far, I think that of course one thing, making 51 games before Angry Birds, I think that it's very important. But this is again for like any entrepreneur, any startup, that it's very important that you you are a bit crazy. So that's kind of like a good like starting point. But also that you really you believe in what you do, and then you might not create an overnight success. And that's something that's very typical, that's typically now not how it happens. So you actually have to kind of like do a few trials, do a few errors, and kind of like figure out what works. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's kind of like one important lesson, that you shouldn't give up like easily, and that it takes a bit of time to create any kind of success. So that's super important. Then I think also one thing that is very important, and if you look at kind of like now the scale of kind of like Angry Birds and 2 billion copies out there and all of that I think that you shouldn't be afraid of setting very, very ambitious goals. I mean, everybody thought that I was crazy when I said that, okay, Angry Birds will have 100 million downloads. And this was when we had, I don't know, 2-3 million or something like that. Everybody said that it's impossible, that, only Tetris has reached those kind of numbers, and it took them 20 years. And then, okay, we hit 100 million in 15 months, so it turned out to be kind of like not ambitious enough, even by like a long shot. So always, like, don't be afraid of thinking really, really big, being really, really ambitious with your kind of like business targets. Then another thing that I think also is very important, if you look at how we kind of like built Rovio and what we've been doing, is that don't be afraid of trying new things, going into new areas. So I mean, we were told that you guys are a games company. What do you know about toys and the toy business? And yeah, I mean, we probably didn't know anything or like that much about toys, but you can always find partners, other people that know about that business, and then you can kind of like work together and figure it out. And I think that's been kind of like very characteristic for what we've been doing at Rovio, that we haven't been afraid of kind of like then expanding, going into new areas, and sometimes successfully, and I would say mostly successfully, and sometimes kind of like less so, but still, don't be afraid of doing things that you have no clue about, So I think that's maybe one thing, and then also I think it's also very important that you actually do stuff. Don't think about things too much. Don't analyze things too much. I mean, like, believe in your kind of like instinct, your gut feeling, and just kind of like go get stuff done. And nowadays, in many cases, it's actually much cheaper to just do than to kind of like just plan and think about it. So I would really recommend, and that's of course true for any startup, that it's the worst thing that you can do is not to do stuff.
I have a question about free-to-play. If you look at top grossing ranks, almost every game is free-to-play. At Rovio, you try it with Angry Bird Racing, and my question is, do you think that this trend will continue, and will you experiment more with free-to-play?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's very clear that the free-to-play model is where it's at, and pretty much everything that we're building right now is free-to-play. So Angry Birds Go was really kind of like our first free-to-play game. But you could also say that then, I mean, we have had free to download, and I think that's also a kind of like maybe a better description to kind of like what's going on. But I mean, we will definitely do more in that area. And again, as I said, we're always learning. So if you look at Angry Birds Go, I think we're now in. Okay, it's like in the top 100 top grossing, but it's not like in the top 10. So we need to do better. And we're now in soft launch with Angry Birds Epic in Canada, New Zealand, Australia. It's doing okay, and we're gonna get that figured out. And if you look at Angry Birds Go, we expect that to do really, really well going forward. So we're adding multiplayer, a lot of kind of like features. We did actually a pretty big change to how it kind of like monetizes in the last update. And I think that this is actually one very important thing, that if you look at free to play, that it's not really about kind of like releasing a game and forgetting about it, but it really is a service. And that's actually how we've been treating our kind of like our premium titles and everything we do. That we always said that we don't make games, we make services, we make experiences. And if you look at the original Angry Birds game, it came with 63 levels, few birds, back in 2009. If you download it today, it has more than 500 levels. So we kept it kind of like fresh. We added new gameplay, and we're doing several massive updates to the original game this year. And the same is true for Angry Birds Seasons. We just did a massive update for Angry Birds Rio, around like the Rio 2 movie. We're doing updates to kind of like Angry Birds Star Wars, those games. We have we have a lot of stuff happening on just the game side. And of course then we have one of our bigger launches this year will be Angry Birds Stella, that is coming in the third quarter. So that's there's lots of stuff coming, and it's all the games are free to play.
Vitaly, Intel. What are the most prospective directions for new games development, and what are most important tools for game development?
So I think from kind of like a business model perspective, free to play is obviously where the money is, and that's like you can ask our friends at Supercell and King and Gung Ho and all of that. So they're doing a very, very good job in perfecting that model. But I think that there's still a lot of room for innovation. It's not like the world's going to be, or let's say hope that it's not going to be copies of Puzzle and Dragons and Candy Crush and Clash of Clans and so on. So I think that there's lots of room to innovate in that space. So free to play is just a way to monetize, if you will. But it's still, you always have to start with a great game. That's really, there's no way around that. So you have to make fantastic games. So it is about kind of like the art of making games. That's hasn't really kind of like changed. We need to have people that are great at making great experiences, great games. Okay, then about the most important tools. I think that the most important tool is kind of like your mind, and then everything else is like irrelevant. You can kind of like use whatever. It's not like there's a shortage of tools. I mean, you can find more tools than you ever need out there, and I think it's also it's never been easier to get stuff out to a massive audience. But because it's easy, again, it comes back to my original point that how do you stand out? How will you create something that is different from all the other guys? So we all have like the most important tool up here.
Thank you. I heard a good definition for the word monetization. Do you know what is it? Monetization is a way of play. This is how you play. You have a choice. You give a choice for a player either to play or not to play. So this is how you make money, and this trend will persist in the future.
Maybe one thing here. I think that it's really important that you have to always start with a great experience, and then you can figure out like different ways how you monetize that. sometimes more aggressively, sometimes less aggressively. But if you look at how we're approaching this at Rovio, as I said, we're building Angry Birds not for 100 days, but for 100 years. So for us, we're building the brand, and going forward, I think that it will be all about brand. And if you look at some of those companies, again, not to mention any names, but who are at top of the list, when it comes to top grossing, not all of them are building brands. And I think that this is one thing that will change, that brand will become super, super important. And it will be interesting to see how what the world looks like in 12 months, but I think that it might be a bit different.
Thank you. У нас есть несколько минут еще на один очень интересный вопрос.
Hi. Let's imagine you are a developer, an indie developer, and you are going to create a super game like New Angry Birds. Could you please let me know what are the exact steps you're going to perform? I mean, from the marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, but
Don't forget to mention that you're a developer, right?
Yeah, I think that it really starts with great game, great experience, and okay, if I would do this personally, I would start with the characters. And that's kind of like how we built Angry Birds as well. That but again, it depends on the game. So it really really depends. But if you look at the more sustainable kind of like businesses and franchises out there, they're all more or less character based. And I think that you can learn a lot if you go to Japan, you go to Korea, that have very mature, not only games, but actually character markets. You can learn a lot from how Sanrio has been building Hello Kitty, as one example. Or, closer to games, what Nintendo has been doing around Mario. Or, Pokemon, or, like the list goes on and on. So all of them are very much about the characters. And I think that this is again also what I was kind of referring to when saying that we're building Angry Birds for like 100 years. So we will do a lot of different Angry Birds experiences. Sometimes games, sometimes animations, books, soft drinks. So it's all about the brand. It's all about the characters. But yeah, if you are a small indie developer, I think that you can go, of course, many paths. So one way is to do kind of like what we're doing. So we're building a brand, building great branded experiences for our fans. But then you can also be, a Supercell or a King or a Gung Ho, that you are a games company and you do only games, and it can be super, super successful and you can make a lot of money. So again, there's big difference in the approach, and I think that it's again you need to do what you kind of like love to do. So I think that it's really there is no kind of like single answer that okay, you should do what we are doing or what Supercell are doing, and there are actually very different approaches to the market if you kind of like start looking at it. So do your thing.
Thank you. We are running out of the time, and at the end of our small lecture, I would like to ask you to make a small advice for all these people, what they can do to be successful in the mobile market.
Yeah. So let's
build the brand.
Let's finish with a really easy question. So how to be successful? I think that the most important thing is that do what you love to do. I think that is, if you look at Rovio, we have 800 so people who all love making games, love playing games, and I think that in any company, any business, if you have passionate people who love what they do, that shows in the products. I think that's something that again, is very, very important. So if you ask me, I think the most important thing, kind of like on your way to success, is that you actually do stuff that you love to do, and then kind of like the rest tends to follow. So I can't give kind of like better advice than that.
Okay, thank you. Let's thank you, Peter, for coming, and he will.
Thank you.